Good evening, everybody. November 29th, 2021. Let's take a look at Bitcoin. I'm going to start with this micro chart. This is a 5-minute chart right now because that's what I ended with yesterday. So if you recall, I was in between the yellow count and the red count. So if you look at my super little numbers here, I was looking at maybe a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up in wave 1 here, or 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 wave 1 here. And it was a little bit unclear which path we were in. However, the action today, and particularly what's happening right now, is kind of giving us an indication of where we are, as this red is much more likely at this point. And let me explain why. So if this was going to be our 1 and 2 here in the yellow, then we would have expected the next wave up to be wave 3 over here, and it would have made a lot more sense for it to continue upwards pretty quickly here, right? Because the third wave should be the strongest, right? So we should have had 1, 2. This looked like maybe that's what we're going to do. Maybe we're going to keep going 3, 4, and 5 like this. However, all of this action right here coming back down essentially to where that possible micro 2 ended last night pretty much takes that off the table. So for now, I think what I can do is eliminate the yellow. So we're going to get rid of all, oops, I got rid of the red by accident. So let's get rid of all the yellow counts there. Okay, and we are going to focus in on the red count and see what is happening with that, because that seems much, much more likely at this point. So potential 5 waves up here. Had an ABC down. It didn't quite get to the ideal region here for a wave 2, and I had drawn this last night, and actually I can get rid of this red line now that applied to the yellow count. Okay, so I'd drawn this green region, support region right here as support for wave 2, anywhere between 54.9 and 56.2, 56.3. That's kind of the ideal support region for a second wave pullback. Had this ABC gone into that region, we might have just been done, but having not gotten there yet, and then having this action with no follow through, it looks very much like an expanded flat correction now, where we have A, B, and then a C down like this. And pretty much C can be done at any point in time. I would expect it to spike into this green box, but it doesn't necessarily have to. So this, basically we're still in this wave 2 correction, is what I'm viewing this as. So, and I guess technically it's more counted as a WXY, but so let's do that. W, X, and Y, somewhere in this region here. Let me just bring that down. WXY into, okay. So that makes sense, and I'm going to make that red so we know it's part of that count. Okay. So now, we really don't know, based on this action here, I don't know when exactly this correction is going to be over. It could certainly be doing a 5-wave move down, which is a little weird for a Y, but it's possible. We could also be doing an even more ridiculous correction where we get something like this as the Y down into the support zone, but end result is pretty much anywhere in here. Seems like a pretty good place to buy, and then the stop simply needs to be below this low right here. We really shouldn't drop anywhere below that. If we go below that, in my opinion, we're probably going down to 40Ks. So that's what I'm going to be operating on under the assumption that we're going to bottom somewhere in this region. If it starts taking off and breaks this high before it gets into the green box, then that's fine. Y and the second wave will have just ended, slightly early, which isn't a huge deal. Let me see. I don't know that my fib extensions would even give me a better target zone. Not so much. Okay. So anyway, let me go to slightly higher time frame here. So I think we're looking at a bit more corrective pattern here. All right, and then once we have a bottom in place there, then we'll be able to look at what comes next, and that'll depend on this fib extension here. Wherever this bottoms out, then we'll be able to figure out where we might end up going. It'll probably be something along these lines, like that, maybe 66, 67, somewhere in that region for the top of this 5-wave move, if in fact we are doing one. I would expect something along those lines. So we'll revise that again as soon as we have a bottom in 2 here. All right, and then if you remember earlier, when we were in this region, I said this is a good place to accumulate because at a minimum we'll get a dead cat bounce, and it should be at least a 3-wave move off of the lows. So the question is this a 3-wave move, and can we just die from here? It's a valid question to ask, and the reason I'm going to say probably not is because if we draw a fib extension from 1 to the second wave down here, basically, this only reached the 382, and that really is not large enough for this to be an ABC. If it had reached the 618 up here at 59.8, then we could worry a little bit more, because that is a possibility of that being a C wave. But the 382, really not too worrisome as far as that goes. So the only worry that we'll have to deal with, in my opinion, is once we have a bottom in here, we might be able to say, okay, let's call that our A and B, and then we'll need to worry about a C wave potentially happening somewhere in this region, right? Once that bottom's in place, we will need to see it break through and give us an actual 3rd wave up beyond the 1, 2, 3, 6 extension. But that analysis is saved for another day because we do not have a bottom yet in 2. But I would be surprised if we just proceeded downwards from here. I mean, if you're longing, I would definitely put your stop there below that low, like I said, because it's not impossible. Obviously, Bitcoin kind of does whatever it wants. But this is not a typical 3-wave move up here. That 3rd wave really should have extended higher. So I am very much leaning towards this being a 2nd wave in an expanded flat correction right now. And going below, last night's low was down here. Going below that to take people's stops out is pretty typical of Bitcoin. So personally, I think the risk reward is pretty darn good to get into some longs in this green area here with a stop below that low. All right, that's all I've got for tonight, and we'll see where we end up bottoming, hopefully bottoming in that region there, and we'll go from there. All right, good night, everybody.